Today, we're going to explore one of every parent's worst nightmares with 7 horror stories involving killer nannies. Get ready to hear chilling stories about people who were hired to look after children, but who hid dark and disturbing intentions. So sit back, check who's watching the kids today, and let's get this hair-raising journey started. Oh, and before the nanny turns off your cell phone, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like. This really helps the channel and ensures you don't miss out on any terrifying content like this. Let's go to 1. The hidden camera. The Canadian winter persisted when Rebecca and Michael Donovan finally found a babysitter for their 4-year-old twins. After 3 months of unsuccessful searches, Elise Chambers seemed perfect. 26 years old, impeccable references, and a comforting calm that immediately calmed the agitated children. "She has experience with autistic children," Rebecca commented to her husband after the initial interview. "You know exactly how to deal with Owen's behaviors." The Donovans had moved to Toronto 6 months ago due to Michael's promotion. With no family nearby, and Owen needing special care due to mild autism, finding someone trustworthy was crucial. Elise started the first week of March. Punctual and attentive, she transformed the morning chaos into a peaceful routine. Owen, normally resistant to strangers, quickly accepted her, while his sister Lily seemed enchanted by the stories the new nanny came up with. Everything seemed perfect until the 3rd week, when Rebecca noticed small changes in Owen's behavior. The boy, who had finally overcome his night terrors, woke up screaming again. During the day, he was more withdrawn, especially when Elise arrived. "Autistic children often regress when there are changes in routine," Elise explained confidently. When Rebecca mentioned her concern, "It's completely normal," the explanation made sense, but Rebecca's maternal instinct was still alert. That's when he noticed a bruise on Owen's arm. "He fell off the swing," Elise explained, showing the journal entry she kept. "I tried to hold him, but he struggled." Children on the spectrum often have low proprioception. Again, the explanation was plausible. Elise used technical terms with ease. Still, something bothered Rebecca. "We should install cameras," she suggested to Michael that night. "Just for our peace of mind," Michael hesitated. "Doesn't it seem invasive? Elise has been excellent." "It's not about not trusting her," Rebecca argued. "It's about better understanding what's causing Owen's regression." Reluctantly, Michael agreed. The next day, they discreetly installed 3 small cameras, one in the living room, another in the kitchen, and the 3rd in the children's bedroom. For the first 2 days, the recordings showed just what they expected. Elise reading stories and deftly managing Owen's occasional outbursts. Rebecca began to feel guilty about her distrust. It was on Wednesday that everything changed. Rebecca was in a meeting when she received a motion notification from her room's camera. Discreetly, he checked the transmission on his cell phone. Owen was sleeping. Elise, sitting next to the bed, watched him with an expression Rebecca had never seen before. Cold, calculating. Slowly, the nanny reached out and pressed the boy's arm, right where the bruise had appeared. When Owen shifted uncomfortably, she quickly pulled her hand away and put on an expression of motherly concern. Rebecca felt her blood run cold. Hands shaking, he continued watching as Elise checked to see if Owen was actually asleep. Satisfied, the nanny went to the bedroom, mirror, and began a disturbing monologue. "Gradual pressure," Elise murmured, demonstrating with her fingers on her arm. "No nail marks. It looks like an accident. Nobody questions it when it's a special child." Rebecca left the meeting immediately. On the way home, he called Michael, who also left work. Both arrived almost simultaneously. Elise seemed genuinely surprised by the boss's early return. "Did something happen?" he asked, the worry on his face now looking like a rehearsed mask. "Just a problem at work," Michael replied. "We need to sort out some things at home today." After dismissing Elise, they checked on the children. Lily was fine, but Owen had new pressure marks on his other arm, still red, not yet developed into bruises. That night, they reviewed all the previous recordings. What they found was terrifying. Moments in which Elise practiced different ways of hurting Owen without leaving obvious evidence. I pressed specific points on his arms and legs, tested ways to scare him without making noise, and rehearsed explanations for possible injuries. More disturbingly, in a recording from 2 days earlier, she had mumbled as she organized medications. Small doses, gradually, neurological symptoms, perfect for an already diagnosed child. The police were contacted immediately. The investigation revealed that Elise Chambers was not who she said she was. Her real name was Emily Carver, a former pediatric nurse investigated for suspicions of Munchausen syndrome by proxy in Vancouver, a disorder where caregivers deliberately cause illness in their patients to get attention. Emily had left the hospital before the investigation was complete, changing her name and creating a new professional history. The impeccable references were falsified. In his apartment, police found a diary detailing his previous techniques and cases. 5 families with children who developed mysterious medical conditions while in his care. 2 of these children had died from unexplained complications. For the Donovans, the discovery was devastating, but also a relief that they had acted in time. As Rebecca stated during the trial, "We entrusted our most vulnerable son to someone who saw his condition not as something to be cared for, but as a perfect cover for his actions." The case led to a review of background check procedures for childcare providers in Ontario, with new requirements for reference checks. Emily Carver was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Investigations into the previous deaths continue. The substitute. The snow was falling softly when Astrid Lindholm's phone rang. It was Ingrid, the nanny who had been looking after her daughter Emma for almost a year, calling to cancel her shift for the night. "A family emergency," she explained, sounding genuinely distressed. "Don't worry," Astrid replied, although internally she panicked. She and her husband Henrik had an important charity dinner that night, the kind of event that could boost his career in investment banking. "I can contact the agency and request a replacement," Ingrid offered. "I know someone who's available tonight." Relieved, Astrid accepted. 30 minutes later, he received a message from the agency confirming that Linnea Bergman would arrive at 6 p.m. Linnea showed up punctually. Looking about 30 years old, he had a warm smile and attentive eyes. He presented his agency identification and immediately established rapport with 6-year-old Emma. "She looks great," Henrik commented as they prepared to leave. "Emma is all ready," showing her all the toys. Astrid nodded, but something was bothering her. "Don't you think it's strange how she already knew that Emma loves unicorns? She even brought a book about them." "Probably Ingrid mentioned it," replied Henrik, adjusting his tie. "We're going to be late." Before they left, Astrid showed Linnea where Emma's emergency numbers, medications, and favorite snacks were. The nanny nodded knowingly, almost as if she already knew. "Don't worry," Linnea said with a reassuring smile. "I have experience with children like Emma." In the car, Astrid frowned. What did she mean by kids like Emma? We never mentioned anything specific about her. Henrik shrugged. "Maybe Ingrid talked about her mild ADHD." Dinner was going well when Astrid received a notification from the home security app. Linnea was in Henrik's office, a room expressly declared off-limits. She watched the nanny shuffle through documents on the table before quickly returning to the room when Emma called. Restless, Astrid called home. Linnea answered on the 3rd ring, sounding perfectly calm. "It's okay," she assured. "Emma is sleeping. We read 3 unicorn stories." Something in the nanny's tone intensified Astrid's anxiety. "Can you check if she's covered? Sometimes she kicks the blanket." "Of course," replied Linnea. There was a pause, footsteps, then, "She's perfectly covered. sleeping like an angel. Astrid relaxed slightly until she realized she hadn't mentioned which room Emma slept in that night. Due to a leak in the ceiling, the girl was temporarily in the guest room. "Henrik," she whispered urgently, "something is wrong. We need to go home." On the way, Astrid called the nanny agency. The receptionist sounded confused. "We didn't send any replacements today. Ingrid hasn't contacted us." The panic grew. Henrik sped up while Astrid tried to call Linnea again. No response. Arriving home, they found the door unlocked. The interior was silent. Disturbingly silent. "Emma?" called Astrid, running into the guest room. The bed was empty. The blankets were arranged as if no one had slept there. On the pillow, a small stuffed unicorn that didn't belong to Emma. Henrik ran through the house, checking each room. In the kitchen, she found a cup with leftover hot chocolate, Emma's favorite drink before bed. "They can't have been out long ago," he said, touching the cup. "It's still warm." Astrid, now in a complete panic, noticed something in Henrik's office. His laptop was open, the screen showing his bank accounts. A pending transfer of 500,000 SEK to an unknown account was awaiting final authorization. The police arrived within minutes. While registering the disappearance, Astrid's phone rang. Number unknown. "If you want to see Emma again," said Linnea's now familiar voice, "authorize the transfer. No police, or you'll never see her again." Investigators traced the call to a burner phone. Reviewing the neighborhood security cameras, they discovered something disturbing. Linnea had been seen in the area several times in recent weeks, often watching the house or discreetly following Astrid and Emma. More alarmingly, when they checked the agency ID she had presented, they discovered it belonged to a legitimate employee who had reported her documents stolen months earlier. Linnea's true identity was revealed. Sophia Ekberg, a former employee of a security company who had installed the system in the Lindholm home the previous year. She had access to the codes, knew the layout of the house, and had meticulously studied the family's habits. The investigation revealed that Sophia had created an elaborate scheme. He monitored the family's communications, including intercepting messages between Astrid and Ingrid. In fact, Ingrid's family emergency had been fabricated. Sophia had sent a fake message from the hospital about Ingrid's mother, ensuring that the regular nanny would cancel. After 36 harrowing hours, police located Sophia and Emma in a remote cabin on the outskirts of Stockholm. The girl was physically unharmed, although traumatized. Sophia had planned to use Emma as collateral until the money was transferred to an offshore account, after which she intended to flee abroad. The Lindholms case exposed a frightening vulnerability: the ease with which someone determined could study a family, intercept their communications, and exploit their trust in established systems like nanny agencies. For Astrid and Henrik, the experience permanently transformed their view of family security. As Astrid commented during the trial, "We thought we were protected by alarms and cameras, but our greatest vulnerability was the trust we placed in strangers to take care of our most precious things." Deleted history. The Australian summer was in full swing when Claire Sullivan finally found the perfect nanny for her 5-year-old son, Noah. As a night shift nurse and single mother, Claire had spent weeks interviewing candidates without success. Diane Reynolds seemed like a gift. 34 years old, with a degree in early childhood education, enthusiastic references from 3 previous families, and availability for overnight stays. Most importantly, Noah, normally shy around strangers, immediately connected with her. "You're a gift from heaven," Claire said after the first week, noting how Diane had organized Noah's chaotic room and established a routine that the boy followed without protest. "I love working with children," replied Diane with a serene smile. "Especially boys Noah's age. It's such a formative time. In the first few weeks, everything went perfectly. Claire arrived home after exhausting shifts to find the house in order and Noah sleeping peacefully. Diane left detailed reports on the boy's activities, meals, and behavior. It was at the beginning of the second month that Claire noticed the first changes. Noah, normally talkative and energetic, became quieter. He started having accidents at night, something that hadn't happened since he was 3 years old. More worryingly, he developed an inexplicable fear of the basement, a space he previously loved for storing his toys. "Kids go through phases," Diane explained when Claire mentioned her concerns. "I've read that temporary regressions are common in single-parent homes. You're probably just processing emotions." The explanation sounded plausible, but Claire's maternal instinct was ringing alarm bells. One night, when he arrived home early from the hospital, he found Noah curled up in his bed, shaking. "What happened, darling?" she asked, hugging him. "I was bad," he whispered. Diane said bad kids go to the dark room. "What dark room?" asked Claire, feeling a chill. "In the basement," Noah replied, tears streaming, "where bad kids stay until they learn." Claire maintained her composure until Diane left, then investigated the basement. In the far corner, behind stacked boxes, he found a small makeshift space with a thin mattress, a flashlight, and, disturbingly, chalk marks on the floor, forming a circle with the inscription, "Reflection Area." Deeply alarmed, Claire decided to investigate further. Diane's references were impeccable, but something bothered her. Using his contacts at the hospital, he got the personal number of the first family listed. "Diane Reynolds?" replied the woman, sounding confused. "Ah, you must mean Deborah." "Deborah? Richards was her name when she worked for us." Claire felt her stomach sink. "Can you tell me about her?" "At first it was wonderful," the woman explained, "but after a few months our son started showing strange behaviors. We discovered that she used questionable disciplinary methods. When confronted, she simply disappeared. Over the next 48 hours, Claire discovered a disturbing pattern. Diane Reynolds had been Deborah Richards in Sydney, Dana Robertson in Brisbane, and possibly Donna Reed in Perth, always changing the name slightly while retaining the initials DR. In each city, it followed the same pattern. It began exemplarily, gradually implemented harsh disciplinary regimes, and disappeared when questioned. More alarmingly, the last family that had employed her in Perth had filed a police report after their 4-year-old son was found locked in the basement for hours. An incident that Donna attributed to a door accident. Claire planned carefully. He asked a colleague to stay with Noah and discreetly installed cameras in the basement and his son's room. He then informed Diane that he would need to work double shifts the following week. A lie that would give her time to monitor the recordings. The second night captured disturbing evidence. Diane taking Noah to the basement after a small juice spill, forcing him to sit on the chalk circle for nearly an hour while she watched impassively. Later, reviewing previous recordings, Claire discovered Diane going through her personal and financial documents when she thought she was alone. With enough evidence, Claire contacted the police. The investigation revealed that the woman's true identity was Dorothy Rankin, a former elementary school teacher whose license had been revoked following accusations of psychological abuse of students. Over the past 6 years, he had worked for 12 different families in 4 Australian states, always disappearing when his methodology was questioned. In his apartment, police found false identity documents, forged references, and most disturbingly, diaries detailing his disciplinary experiments on the children in his care. He firmly believed he was correcting flaws in modern creation through techniques of isolation and psychological control. For Claire and Noah, recovery was gradual. With appropriate therapy, the boy overcame his new fears, although it took months before he felt comfortable with another babysitter. The scariest thing, Claire reflected during the trial, was how easily we accepted someone into our home, into our lives. based on references we never properly checked. She not only deceived me, but several families before. The case led to a review of background check procedures for childcare workers in Australia, with new guidelines requiring biometric verification and a national register of certified childminders. Dorothy. Rankin was convicted of fraud, forgery, and multiple counts of child abuse. During the trial, he remained steadfast in his conviction that his methods were necessary to correct modern permissiveness, a view the judge described as deeply disturbing coming from someone who sought positions of trust with vulnerable children. What's up, guys? The killer nanny stories are chilling even now, aren't they? If you're enjoying these scary stories, how about taking a quick stop and subscribing to the channel? Just click the sign up button below and take the opportunity to leave your like too. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to continue bringing you more terrifying content like this. It's quick and makes all the difference. Now, shall we go back to our killer nanny horror stories? There's still a lot of fear ahead. The babysitter's diary. Spring rain was tapping on the windows when 8-year-old twins Oliver and Sophie found the black-covered notebook. They were playing hide-and-seek in the apartment, while their parents, James and Eleanor Wright, prepared for a rare night out. The notebook was carefully hidden under the mattress in the guest room occupied by Amelia, the nanny who had been taking care of them for 4 months. "It looks like a diary," Sophie whispered, flipping through the first few pages. "Look, there are children's names." Oliver, normally the more cautious of the two, hesitated. "We shouldn't read it. It's private." But Sophie was already absorbed. In the pages. "Wait, there's our name here, and it looks like she's writing about taking us away." The entry Sophie found, dated 2 weeks earlier, was disturbing. "The Wrights are like everyone else, obsessed with their careers, using their children as props. Oliver and Sophie deserve better. They will be the next to be released once. Preparations are complete, 3 weeks at the most." Scared, the twins took the diary to Sophie's room. In the following pages, they found something even more alarming, a meticulous plan to disappear with them during a trip to the park, using fake documents to get them out of the country. Even more disturbing, there were references to other children. The Bennetts never deserved Thomas. He's happy now, finally with someone who truly values him. And Lily is adapting well to her new life. Sometimes she asks about her parents, but she will soon forget those neglectful ones. "We need to show Mom and Dad," Oliver said, his face pale. At that moment, they heard Amelia's voice calling them from the corridor. Quickly, Sophie hid the diary under her pillow. Amelia appeared in the doorway, smiling sweetly as always. At 32 years old, with perfectly coiffed brown hair and conservative clothes, she looked like the epitome of the ideal nanny. His references were impeccable, his background checked. The Wrights considered themselves lucky to have found her. Your parents are almost leaving," she said. "Shall we go down to say goodbye?" During dinner, the twins remained unusually quiet. Amelia prepared her favorite noodles, serving them with a warm smile that now seemed sinister to the children's eyes. "They're so quiet today," she commented, tilting her head. "Any problems at school?" "Just tired," Oliver murmured, avoiding his gaze. When James and Eleanor finally left for their dinner, promising to return before midnight, Sophie waited until Amelia was busy in the kitchen before whispering to Oliver, "We need to call them." Oliver nodded, secretly picking up the landline in the room. He dialed his father's cell phone number, but the call went straight to voicemail. The same happened with the mother's number. "She must have done something with their phones," Sophie whispered, panic rising. Determined to get help, the twins came up with a plan. Sophie pretended to have a stomachache, keeping Amelia occupied while Oliver used the family computer to send a desperate email to his Aunt Kate, attaching photos of the diary's most disturbing pages. The night advanced slowly. Amelia suggested a movie, watching the children with what now seemed like calculating interest. "Tomorrow, we can go to the park," he mentioned casually. The big one with the lake. That would be fun, wouldn't it? The twins exchanged alarmed glances. The park with the lake was exactly where, according to the diary, she planned to begin the transition. When it was finally time for bed, Amelia insisted on staying in the room until they fell asleep, something she had never done before. "I just want to make sure you're comfortable," he explained, sitting down between the two beds. Oliver pretended to quickly fall asleep, but through half-closed eyes, he saw Amelia checking her phone repeatedly, looking more and more anxious. Shortly after 11 p.m., the doorbell rang. Amelia stood up abruptly. "Stay here," he ordered, his tone suddenly hard. "Don't leave this room." From downstairs, the twins heard voices, Amelia sounding defensive, and then, to their immense relief, their Aunt Kate's voice, followed by authoritative male voices. Minutes later, Kate ran into the room, hugging them tightly. "It's okay now," she assured. "The police are here." The subsequent investigation revealed the true identity of Amelia Carter. Her real name was Margaret Winters, a former social worker with a history of psychological problems. He had worked for at least 5 families over the past 3 years, always with falsified credentials. More alarmingly, 2 children mentioned in her diary, Thomas Bennett and Lily Cooper, had in fact disappeared within the last 18 months. Thomas was found living with an aunt in Scotland, in fact, an accomplice of Margaret's. Lily remains missing. In Margaret's apartment, the police found fake passports, sedative medications, and a detailed map with escape routes to the European continent. Her diary revealed a distorted view where she saw herself as savior of children, with parents she considered neglectful or unworthy. For the Wrights, the experience was a terrifying awakening. As Eleanor stated during the trial, "We entrusted our children to a stranger who went through every possible check. If it had not been for the courage and insight of Oliver and Sophie, they could have disappeared forever." The case led to a review of vetting procedures for childcare workers in the UK, with new requirements for biometric verification and regular monitoring. The last family. The spring rain fell gently as Margaret Campbell opened the door to Edith Blackwood. At 72, Edith was an institution in Morningside, a traditional neighbourhood in Edinburgh. For nearly 5 decades, he had cared for the children of the city's most respectable families. Punctual as always, Margaret smiled, relieved. With 3-year-old twins and a high-risk pregnancy that often confined her to bed, the young doctor was completely dependent on the nanny recommended by her neighbour. "I've never been late in 50 years of work," replied Edith, with her characteristic smile, hanging up her impeccably pressed coat. "And I won't start now in my last month." Edith's imminent retirement was the talk of the neighbourhood. After decades spent caring for generations of children, he planned to move to a small coastal village. The Campbells would be her last family, a fact that Margaret considered an honour, given the elderly woman's impeccable reputation. That morning, while Edith was playing with the twins in the living room, Margaret received an unexpected call. From her friend Claire, a paediatrician at the same hospital. "Remember that strange case I mentioned, the child with unexplained symptoms?" Claire whispered. "I discovered something disturbing. The family's nanny is Edith Blackwood." Margaret felt a chill run down her spine. "Impossible. Edith has been taking care of children for decades. She's practically a legend in the neighbourhood." "Exactly. What intrigued me," Claire continued, "I started researching other similar cases in recent years. I found 5 children with similar symptoms, all from families that employed Edith." After hanging up, Margaret couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort. While he rested, he began discreetly searching on the tablet. What she discovered made her progressively more alarmed. Over the past 30 years, 6 families who had employed Edith suffered what the newspapers called tragic accidents. The Petersons lost their 4-year-old son in an accidental drowning during a walk in the park, with Edith as the only witness. The Mackenzies lost their home in a night fire, with only their father surviving, who was traveling. The Sullivans lost 2 children to a gas leak while they slept. Edith had left earlier that day, citing a family emergency. Each incident, viewed in isolation, looked like a terrible accident. Together, they formed a disturbing pattern that no one had noticed before. With hands shaking, Margaret continued her research. He discovered that Edith always moved to a new neighborhood after each tragedy, returning years later when the memories had faded. His impeccable reputation and discreet manner ensured that no one questioned his past. More alarmingly, Margaret found an old photo from a local newspaper. It showed a young Edith alongside a smiling family, the Blackwoods. The caption mentioned that Edith had been the only survivor of a fire that killed her parents and siblings when she was just 16 years old. The case was filed as an electrical accident. That evening, when her husband returned, Margaret shared her findings. Initially skeptical, James became progressively more concerned. "We need to be cautious," he whispered. "If I'm right, we're dealing with someone extremely dangerous and patient." The next morning, Margaret noticed something disturbing. The fire alarm had been deactivated, supposedly because it was defective. The locks on the back door were stuck. Small changes that individually seemed innocent, but together formed an alarming pattern. Determined to protect her family, Margaret discreetly installed security cameras and independent smoke sensors. He also began meticulously documenting each of Edith's suspicious behaviors. The opportunity came when he found Edith in the basement, examining the electrical panel. The elderly woman explained that she was just checking for a strange noise. But Margaret noticed that several circuit breakers had been tampered with. Summoning her courage, Margaret contacted authorities with her evidence. The subsequent investigation revealed the true extent of the horror. Over 5 decades, Edith Blackwood had been connected to at least a dozen accidents that resulted in death, always escaping suspicion due to her advanced age and impeccable reputation. In his meticulously organized apartment, police found diaries detailing every family, every child, every accident, all described with a disturbing clinical coldness. They also found carefully preserved newspaper clippings recounting the tragedies she had orchestrated. For Margaret Campbell and the other families who survived, the revelation was devastating. As Margaret stated during the trial, "We entrusted our children and our homes to someone we saw as a caring grandmother. We never imagined that behind that gentle smile lurked a patient predator who had perfected her craft over decades." Edith Blackwood's case joined other rare but documented cases of elderly caregivers exploiting the trust placed in them because of their age and harmless appearance. As the forensic psychiatrist noted during the trial, what makes these cases particularly disturbing is patience and meticulous planning. They are not crimes of passion, but rather calculated over months or years. And for the residents of Morningside, the story of dear Edith serves as a grim reminder that sometimes the most insidious danger can hide behind the kindest smile and most impeccable reputation, waiting patiently for the last family. Edith Blackwood was sentenced to life in prison at the age of 73, making her one of the oldest serial criminals ever convicted in Scottish history. Calculated revenge, the spring rain fell gently as Margaret Campbell opened the door to Edith Blackwood. At 72, Edith was an institution in Morningside, a traditional neighborhood in Edinburgh. For nearly 5 decades, he had cared for the children of the city's most respectable families. Punctual as always, Margaret smiled, relieved. With 3-year-old twins and a high-risk pregnancy that often confined her to bed, the young doctor was completely dependent on the nanny recommended by her neighbor. "I've never been late in 50 years of work," replied Edith with her characteristic smile, hanging up her impeccably pressed coat. "And I won't start now, in my last month." Edith's imminent retirement was the talk of the neighborhood. After decades spent caring for generations of children, he planned to move to a small coastal village. The Campbells would be her last family, a fact that Margaret considered an honor given the elderly woman's impeccable reputation. That morning, while Edith was playing with the twins in the living room, Margaret received an unexpected call from her friend Claire, a pediatrician at the same hospital. "Remember that strange case I mentioned? The child with unexplained symptoms," Claire whispered. "I discovered something disturbing. The family's nanny is Edith Blackwood." Margaret felt a chill run down her spine. Impossible. Edith has been taking care of children for decades. She's practically a legend in the neighborhood. "Exactly. What intrigued me," Claire continued, "I started researching other similar cases in recent years. I found 5 children with similar symptoms, all from families that employed Edith." After hanging up, Margaret couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort. While he rested, he began discreetly searching on the tablet. What she discovered made her progressively more alarmed. Over the past 30 years, 6 families who had employed Edith suffered what the newspapers called tragic accidents. The Petersons lost their 4-year-old son in an accidental drowning during a walk in the park, with Edith as the only witness. The Mackenzies lost their home in a night fire, with only their father surviving, who was traveling. The Sullivans lost 2 children to a gas leak while they slept. Edith had left earlier that day, citing a family emergency. Each incident, viewed in isolation, looked like a terrible accident. Together, they formed a disturbing pattern that no one had noticed before. With hands shaking, Margaret continued her research. He discovered that Edith always moved to a new neighborhood after each tragedy, returning years later when the memories had faded. His impeccable reputation and discreet manner ensured that no one questioned his past. More alarmingly, Margaret found an old photo from a local newspaper. It showed a young Edith alongside a smiling family, the Blackwoods. The caption mentioned that Edith had been the only survivor of a fire that killed her parents and siblings when she was just 16 years old. The case was filed as an electrical accident. That evening, when her husband returned, Margaret shared her findings. Initially skeptical, James became progressively more concerned. "We need to be cautious," he whispered. "If I'm right, we're dealing with someone extremely dangerous and patient." The next morning, Margaret noticed something disturbing. The fire alarm had been deactivated, supposedly because it was defective. The locks on the back door were stuck. Small changes that individually seemed innocent, but together formed an alarming pattern. Determined to protect her family, Margaret discreetly installed security cameras and independent smoke sensors. He also began meticulously documenting each of Edith's suspicious behaviors. The opportunity came when he found Edith in the basement, examining the electrical panel. The elderly woman explained that she was just checking for a strange noise, but Margaret noticed that several circuit breakers had been tampered with. Summoning her courage, Margaret contacted authorities with her evidence. The subsequent investigation revealed the true extent of the horror. Over 5 decades, Edith Blackwood had been connected to at least a dozen accidents that resulted in death, always escaping suspicion due to her advanced age and impeccable reputation. In his meticulously organized apartment, police found diaries detailing every family, every child, every accident, all described with a disturbing clinical coldness. They also found carefully preserved newspaper clippings recounting the tragedies she had orchestrated. For Margaret Campbell and the other families who survived, the revelation was devastating. As Margaret stated during the trial, "We entrusted our children and our homes, to someone we saw as a caring grandmother. We never imagined that behind that gentle smile lurked a patient predator who had perfected her craft over decades. Edith Blackwood's case joined other rare but documented cases of elderly caregivers exploiting the trust placed in them because of their age and harmless appearance. As the forensic psychiatrist noted during the trial, what makes these cases particularly disturbing is patience and meticulous planning. They are not crimes of passion, but rather calculated over months or years. And for the residents of Morningside, the story of dear Edith serves as a grim reminder that sometimes the most insidious danger can hide behind the kindest smile and most impeccable reputation, waiting patiently for the last family. Edith Blackwood was sentenced to life in prison at the age of 73, making her one of the oldest serial criminals ever convicted in Scottish history. The silent influence. The snow was beginning to fall when Valérie Laurent hired Madeleine Fournier as a nanny for her 7-year-old twin children, Luc and Émilie. As a recently divorced diplomat working at the United Nations, Valérie needed someone reliable to watch the children during her frequent meetings and travels. Madeleine, 34, seemed perfect. Fluent in 4 languages, trained in child psychology, and with impeccable references from diplomatic families. His calm demeanor and structured methodology won Valérie over immediately. Children need stability after divorce, Madeleine explained during the interview. I can provide that while you rebuild your career. In the first few weeks, the transformation was remarkable. The twins, previously agitated by their parents' separation, became calmer and more organized. Their rooms remained spotless, homework was completed without complaint, and meals, previously daily battles, passed without incident. What's your secret? Valérie asked, impressed by the change. Consistency and clear communication, replied Madeleine with a discreet smile. Children thrive on structure. It was after 3 months that Valérie began to notice subtle changes. The once affectionate twins became distant when she returned from travels. Little comments began to emerge. Madeleine said, "You work so much because you prefer your job to us." Or Madeleine told us why Dad really left. When questioned, Madeleine deftly denied. Children often process difficult emotions by making up stories. It's perfectly normal after a divorce. The situation gradually deteriorated. Valérie began to find her belongings out of place. Nothing significant, just small shifts that made her question her own memory. Important documents would temporarily disappear, only to reappear in obvious locations. More disturbingly, Valérie began to suffer inexplicable episodes of malaise, dizziness, nausea, mental confusion. Doctors suggested stress and exhaustion, plausible diagnoses considering his workload. The true nature of the situation revealed itself accidentally. Returning early from a cancelled conference, Valérie found Madeleine conducting what looked like a class for the twins in the kitchen. "Certain plants are medicines when used correctly," explained Madeleine, showing small vials of herbs. "This, for example, when added to tea in small doses, only causes drowsiness. In larger doses..." Upon seeing Valérie, Madeleine quickly turned the lesson into a botany science lesson. The twins looked strangely disappointed at the interruption. Deeply disturbed, Valérie discreetly installed cameras in common areas of the house. What she discovered over the next few weeks was terrifying. Madeleine conducted regular sessions, where she systematically poisoned the twins' perception of their mother. "Your mother abandoned you emotionally, just like your father," she said in one video. "But I will never abandon. I'm the only one who really cares." In another recording, Madeleine taught the twins how to add substances to Valérie's tea, just enough to make her feel tired and confused. "It's our little secret, yes? We're just helping her rest." More alarmingly, Madeleine was clearly preparing the children for something bigger. When our plan is complete, we can be together forever. You'd like that, wouldn't you? No more abandonment. With enough evidence, Valerie contacted authorities. The investigation revealed that Madeleine Fournier had worked for 6 families over the past 12 years. In each case, it followed a similar pattern: gaining the parents' trust, emotionally isolating the children, and gradually creating psychological dependence. 2 of his previous families had suffered unexplained tragedies. A father died of natural causes after months of mysterious symptoms. A mother was admitted to a psychiatric institution after psychotic episodes, during which she claimed her nanny was poisoning her, claims dismissed as paranoia. In his apartment, investigators found a meticulous diary detailing his interventions with each family. Madeleine did not see herself as a criminal, but as a savior of children from parents she considered emotionally neglectful. His ultimate goal was always the same: to create situations where he could obtain legal custody of children after the parents were removed. Toxicological analyses confirmed that Valerie had been exposed to a combination of difficult-to-detect natural substances, foxglove extract in low doses, causing cardiac symptoms and confusion, scopolamine, inducing disorientation, and other herbs that combined created symptoms easily attributable to stress or psychological disorders. For the twins, recovery was a slow and painful process. The psychological manipulation had been profound, creating an almost cultistic loyalty to the nanny. Specialized therapists worked to deconstruct the false narratives implanted by Madeleine for months. The most terrifying thing, Valerie reflected, during the trial was the subtlety. There was no physical violence, no obviously abusive behavior that would set off alarms. She was literally poisoning my children against me, preparing them to become instruments in my own destruction. Madeleine Fournier's case exposed a rarely discussed form of abuse: the psychological manipulation of children to turn them against their own parents. As the forensic psychiatrist noted during the trial, this type of abuse is particularly insidious because it operates in the shadows, exploiting the natural trust of children and the vulnerability of families in transition. Madeleine was sentenced to 18 years in prison on multiple charges, including attempted murder, poisoning, and child psychological abuse. Investigations into the deaths and hospitalizations in their previous families remain ongoing. And so we come to the end of our 7 horror stories involving killer nannies. So what did you think? Which story gave you the most goosebumps? Will any of these make you check references better the next time you need to hire someone? Tell me in the comments which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the terrifying world of nannies with dark intentions, don't forget to leave a like. This really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing more scary content like this. And if you are not yet registered, take the opportunity now to sign up and activate the bell.